Hi, everyone, and welcome back. This is the second part of the Activity 1.15 Literary Analysis Paragraph. The first part discussed how to set up your papers and format your header and how to double space and make sure that you are heading your papers correctly for this class. This video will talk about the prompt for writing the literary analysis paragraph, as well as model the writing process. So I'm going to go through and model that for you so that by the end of the video, you're going to see that I will have a complete paragraph, as well as hopefully giving you some ideas about what you can write for this story. So we did 1.10, which was a literary analysis paragraph on Lamb to the Slaughter, and that was returned to you with some feedback. So you're going to want to make sure you go back to that, read the feedback so that you understand how you can improve in writing this one. Okay, so let's take a look at our learning targets. So basically, just like last time, we're going to use an outline to plan the paragraph. We're going to generate a topic sentence that includes a claim. Now, a claim is basically an argument. And so because reading can be interpreted in many different ways, or literature can, you can argue that an author has created a certain message through his use of techniques. You can argue that a story has a different meaning than what someone else might believe. As long as you have sufficient evidence to make that argument, then that is a debatable claim and it is effective. So you're going to include a claim, an argument about how the author created this story and why. And in the end, you will have drafted a literary analysis paragraph. So take a look at the preview here. In this activity, you will use an outline to help you develop and write a literary analysis paragraph about how the language used in An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge connects to the overall message of the story. Now, I put this little sticky note here. The overall message of the story is the definition of the word theme. So really what they're asking you is to take a look at the theme. What do you think the theme of the story is? What is it that the author wanted you to come away with? An understanding of something. So stories are written not just for entertainment, but they always have some kind of a message about life. And this story is about war. So what is it that he wants you to know, Ambrose Bierce, about war, okay, or the Civil War? You could be even more specific. All right, so I am going to model to the specific prompt that's here. And then when we get to the end, I'm going to try and help you come up with some ideas for what you could write about as your topic sentence. So I am going to model writing a literary analysis paragraph about how Ambrose Bierce uses shifts in language. Shifts in language, that's the literary technique, to make a statement about the nature of war. And that'll be the theme. So whatever that statement is that I think he's trying to make about the nature of war. And then you, when we're done here, will write about another aspect. Okay. All right, you're going to use the single paragraph outline that we did in 1.110, which I'm also going to model here. Now, here's where things went wrong in 1.10, but not for everyone, just for a few of you. Some of you just recounted the plot, or you just said, it was funny because the detectives were eating the murder weapon, but you didn't talk about how the author created that humor through the use of dramatic irony. So what we need to look at here is, what are the techniques that Ambrose Bierce uses? So this one that I'm going to model uses shifts in language. So that's the technique I'm going to talk about. Some of you might talk about his use of flashback. Some of you might talk about his use of imagery or telling details. Some of the other things that you could talk about could be his conflict between himself and death, right? This idea that he doesn't want to die and he's looking for a way to escape. So there are many different things at the end that we'll put forward as a topic sentence, but you must closely examine one or more literary techniques and its effect on the reader, the overall message or theme, the tone, or the story. So for example, and I'm just going to put an example in here. In activity 1.10, you were asked to argue about lamb to the slaughter, and they gave you a sentence stem. In lamb, we got to put that in. Lamb to the slaughter, Dahl conveys humor, which is what a lot of you said, through his use of, and this is where some of you got lost. Instead of using that word by or through that the sentence stem gave you, you said things like Dahl conveys humor by making the detectives eat the murder weapon. That's a plot element, and yes, it can be argued, but it is a much stronger argument if you identify the literary technique. So I'm going to say dramatic irony is how he conveyed humor. So I have a literary technique. I have the impact on the reader, the humor. That's also tone. So humor is a tone. It's a feeling. And then I would go back and I would use as evidence the fact that the detectives were eating the leg of lamb. So that's actually evidence, not your claim. Okay? So hopefully you can see the difference there. All right, so we're going to begin by creating a topic sentence that connects something that we observed about an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. I'm going to use the shift in language as my observation to a theory that we have about the story's overall meaning. An effective topic sentence will state an argument that supports a claim. Okay, so my claim is basically that he communicates a statement about the art of war or the nature of war by using shifts in language. Now, I believe that the statement he's trying to make is that we romanticize war and that we shouldn't, that war is really tragic. So I would have to support that with evidence from the story while also being debatable. Someone could say, and several of you did when you answered the activity questions, that he believed in a cause and he stood up for that cause and was willing to die for it. So that might be the message, that you should be willing to die for a cause you believe in. And that could be supported. Maybe that's the overall message and you can support that. All right, so I am going to go up to the top and turn on Springboard's answers, because that's what I'm going to model for you, is how Springboard has done this. So here is a possible topic sentence. Okay. Ambrose Bierce's use of language in an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge shifts between factual description and fantastic imagery to represent the contrast between the reality of war and the romanticism of war. So I did notice that when he was describing his injuries, when he was describing trying to escape the gunshots, he was being very factual. They were coming from this direction. They were using this weapon. They were reloading. He was saying his neck was aching. His heart was beating. The bullets were beating the water vigorously with quick downward strokes. This is very factual, okay? But he does shift at times and notice things like the brilliant-bodied flies, the gray spiders stretching their webs from twig to twig, and he noted the prismatic colors in all the dewdrops upon a million blades of grass. Right, now that is very flowery, romantic language. And there is this contrast here between when they're shooting at him or when he's describing being hung, the Many of you said that the hanging implement was simple yet effectual. So there's factual information, and then there is this flowery imagery that he creates around the setting and his wife. Okay? So I do see this contrast here. He does talk about this reality of war. We end with our character protagonist being hung. And yet there is this romanticism of him wanting to live the larger life of a soldier, and that's the quote there. All right, so that's going to be my topic sentence. Yours might be somewhat different, and we'll talk about that. All right, so this is the outline. How am I going to prove that there is a shift in language and that shift in language creates a theme of romanticism versus reality? Okay. So at the beginning, we have lots of detail, very factual detail. The soldiers and sentries, right? Sentries at the end of the bridge, the soldiers who are in formation, the weapons that they're holding, right down to how they're holding them. These observations are very factual when he's looking at the army, the soldiers, the weapon, the implements of war. Okay. So that's one thing I'm going to want to talk about. Now I'm going to talk about his view, right? So there's the chase scene as he's trying to get away from the bullets. He's swimming vigorously. These are facts, right? Next, here's some motion. When he's moving, he sees streaks of color. I would use the details about the setting that I read to you a moment ago. And then in the end, he uses like a coroner's voice. It's very formal. His first/last name, broken neck, right? So when I go to the end of the story and I see Peyton Farquhar was dead, his body with a broken neck swung gently from side to side. It sounds like a very factual obituary, something that you might see printed in a newspaper as written by the coroner, as opposed to the paragraph before, where he sees a blinding white light blazing all about him with a sound like the shock of a cannon. Then all is darkness and silence. That's much more romanticized than the factual Peyton Farquhar was dead, right? Boom, factual. All right. So then we have to have a concluding statement. So we've got 4 pieces of evidence here. That's significant. That's a great argument. We're going to really prove it. And then we have a concluding statement. Now, this is where he applies it to the world, right? So at the end, in the concluding statement, remember that we're making a universal statement. We are trying to explain why it matters that he did this, right? Basically, the author, Ambrose Bierce, wants to leave the readers stunned and silent instead of in that dreamy moment, right? Feeling the emptiness of Farquhar's dreams of war. He doesn't want us to linger on the romantic beauty. He wants us to linger on the starkness, the emptiness of the hanging body there, right? Okay, so that is our outline. So basically, we are arguing that he wants to reveal with this contrast in language that war, that we should look at war in a realistic way rather than a romantic way. Okay. All right. So return to the story and find evidence. Okay. We did that. And then add the most compelling evidence to the numbered lines. We did that. We crafted a concluding statement. And now it says, go ahead and draft. Support the claim with details and evidence. Use quotation marks around text that comes directly from the story. Many of you referred to paragraph numbers, and I admire your dedication to citations. It is very important not to plagiarize. However, I will tell you that when we work from our springboard text, unless we're writing what I call a synthesis essay, where you're taking multiple different articles or multiple different stories and writing about them in the same piece, you don't need to reference the paragraphs. Okay, so the quote is enough. As long as I know, what story you're talking about and you've tagged the story in your opening statement, you are fine without referencing the paragraphs. Excuse me. So basically, they have taken the sentences from above, added some explanation, and then created this paragraph. So let's go ahead. I'm going to read it to you. Ambrose Bierce's use of language in an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge shifts between factual description and fantastic imagery in order to represent the contrast between the reality of war and the romanticism of war. So here I have my tagging, Ambrose Bierce. I have my literary device, use of language and language shifts. Okay. I have my title of my story. And then I have right here the reason it matters. Okay. And that's the overall theme of the message. So he does this in order to this. So just remember, you're writing a statement that says the story or the author does this in order to create something, make the reader feel something, send a message to the reader, whatever the purpose is. Okay, so I'm going to keep reading here. In the beginning of the story, Bierce includes lots of precise language to describe exactly where each soldier is positioned for the execution. However, in part 3 of the story, when the narrator is telling the story from Farquhar's perspective, Bierce uses language that expresses adventure and motion. For example, he describes Farquhar swimming vigorously with the current and seeing everything as circular, horizontal streaks of color. In the end, Bierce decides to snap the reader back to reality with a return to the more formal language of the beginning of the story. The narrator sounds almost like a coroner, using Farquhar's full name and stating his cause of death. Broken neck. Bierce wants to leave the reader stunned and silent, feeling the emptiness of Farquhar's dreams of war. A couple things I want you to notice. There are no super long quotes here. You don't need them. So we're not retelling the story. He only includes the details that are important to proving the claim. Okay? So he explains that he includes lots of precise language to describe. Okay? And then he gives an example of some of that language, right? But a very short piece. He doesn't put the whole sentence in. He doesn't even put in, several pieces of evidence. He just uses that. Again, he has just a little bit more right here. And notice how these quotes and these details are woven into this author's own sentence in his own words. Okay. For example, he, being the author, describes Farquhar, and then he puts the quote inside his own words. Okay. All right. Now, this is a very complex read on the story. This is a complex analysis with a lot of information. More information from the writer's perspective than the story itself. A literary analysis paragraph is about me telling you what I think it means and how I think the author made it mean that. It's not about me telling you the story again. Okay, so notice that it doesn't even talk about how he had a flashback about his wife, doesn't mention his wife at all, doesn't talk about how he was trying to find a way to escape. It simply talks about the use of language. Okay, so now it's your turn, and you need to write a topic sentence. So I'm going to scroll back up, and I'm going to propose some topic sentences way up here. All right. So, possibilities. So you might, what I want you to remember is you're going to have tag, title, author, genre. So in the short story, an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. And we can make this look just like the one from Lamb to the Slaughter, author Ambrose Bierce. Okay, now we have to figure out what we're going to argue. So we have a statement, a tag. Now we need to explain how the author communicates a theme. Okay. So first thing you have to decide is, what is the theme of this story, do you think? Do you think it's about, hanging on to the ones you love in your memory because they give you hope that you might live? Is it always looking for a way to escape even when you feel like death is imminent? Don't give up. Continue to look for a way out. Is it that you should stand up for a cause that you believe in? Once you settle on what you think the meaning of the story is, then ask yourself, how does he communicate that? Is it through the flashback? Is it through his look at character and how the civilian wanted to live the life of the larger soldier? That would be under characterization. So that would be the literary term. So you're going to start here, right? So let's do this. Instead of saying possibilities, let's say process. So you have tag, right? Now what you have to do is determine theme, overall meaning. And then you're going to ask yourself, how does the author communicate that? And again, be specific with what literary techniques. And I'm going to put a few possibilities in here. Characterization, tone. Tone's an important one. Language. So that could be the shifts of language if you wanted to write about that. Let's see, flashback was one. So that could maybe be about, that could go with wanting to be the soldier and live the life of a hero, right? We could talk about flashback to show that he wanted to be a hero. Is it the journey at the end? What else can we say about that? We really don't. We do have dramatic irony, right? We know that it is a Union soldier and that he's been tricked. So basically, identify a theme. Then identify how the author communicates that theme. So what techniques does he use? Okay, that's going to be your process. Once you have that, then you will have your entire topic sentence. It will sound something like what we have down below. So in the short story, An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, author Ambrose Bierce, right, conveys a message of hope, a message of not giving up or standing up for what you believe, whatever that is, through his use of characterization, language shifts, tone, flashback, dramatic irony. Then find the evidence that fits that. Focus less on the story, more on the technique. So if you're going to talk about how he uses flashback to show that he wanted to live the life of a hero, then you need to talk more about the flashback and how it takes us, the reader, into knowing more about the motives behind what this man did, right? Less about his journey, more about his motives and how the author reveals that. All right, so you have lots of options on what you can write about. It does not have to be specifically about the shifts of language. However, if you feel more comfortable writing about the shifts of language because you saw me model that, you are absolutely welcome to do that. All right, so I'm going to copy and paste this into all of the class periods so that hopefully you will be able to see it. And if you have any questions, feel free to stop into my office hour. The information is in the Google Classroom, and I am more than happy to write with you or help break down the feedback on your last paragraph, or just give you some assistance and maybe just some motivation to get writing. All right, thank you, you guys. Good luck. I know you're going to do just fine. And remember that writing is a process. So if it's not perfect, you can continue, just turn it in when you're done, and you'll see my feedback and you can rewrite it, because that's what revision is all about. All right, you guys, I'll see you in our live sessions this week. Thank you.